This is a video on work. The question states, determine whether the work done along each path is positive, negative, or zero. So here's our vector field, and here's three paths, C1, C2, and C3. And let's recall the work is defined as the line integral over the curve C of the vector field F dot dr. So we have our three paths, and it's easier to realize that the dot product is defined as the magnitude of the first vector times the magnitude of the second vector times the cosine of the angle between the vectors. This is the magnitudes are always positive. So to determine if the work is positive, negative, or zero, we want to see if the cosine of the angle is positive, negative, or zero. And recall that the cosine of an acute angle is always positive. The cosine of an obtuse angle is negative. And if the angle is a right angle, then the cosine is zero. So let's look at our curve C1 first. So if we look at the angle between the force field vector and the vector along the curve C1, we see that these angles are all acute. So the cosine of these angles will all be positive. So we can conclude that the work for a particle moving along the curve C1 by the force field F is positive. Now let's look at C2. For C2, we see that at the beginning we have an acute angle, but then we move over to an obtuse angle, and then we move back to an acute angle, and then it's more like closer to a right angle. So this goes back and forth and back and forth. So we get positives and negatives and zeros, and they kind of cancel each other out. So the work for a particle moving along C2 done by the vector field is about equal to zero. Now let's look at C3. For C3, the curve, or the particle moving along the curve, is moving against the vector field F. And in particular, we look at the angle between the vectors, and those angles are obtuse angles. So the cosine of those angles are all going to be negative for every vector along the curve compared to the vectors on the force field. So we can conclude that the work done by the vector field for a particle moving along C3 is negative. And I'm done with the problem.